Black women across the country of the United States are reclaiming their time, their rest, and their power on our own terms. And here, we're doing it God's way. Welcome to Sisters Unbothered, the place where we reject the grind, unlearn the struggle, and embrace the kind of peace that can't be shaken. I'm Coach Nikki Cates, and every week we're having real, unfiltered conversations about rest as resistance, ease as strategy, and why soft power is not just a luxury, it's our birthright. Because in a world that expects us to carry everything, choosing rest is revolutionary. So take a deep breath, sis. You don't have to earn this. Now, let's get to it. Hey, Sisters Unbothered. This is your girl, Coach Nikki Cates. I hope you enjoyed your Easter weekend. How'd it go? Let me welcome you back to another episode of Sisters Unbothered, the space where we speak truth, honor the divine in all of us, and reclaim our God-given identity in a world that continues to try to rename, reduce, or even erase us. If you're new here, I'm so glad. I hope you found your way home, and I hope that I will earn your trust. If you've been walking with us already, thank you so much for your support and your sisterhood. Let's go ahead and get into this week's truth. So we're still on this concept of God renaming and re-identifying. If you're not familiar, please go back after this and listen to the previous podcasts or read the previous blog posts from the last few weeks. We've been talking about God giving us not necessarily a new name because he named us at our creation, but it's new to us because when we are born into this world, most likely we were born into a name given to us and grew into labels that were placed upon us based off of societal understanding and culture. So what we're trying to do here, what we are attempting to do, my sister, is to have our own means of a sort of resurrection as we begin to shed the names that did not mean us well and begin to embrace the labels and the names that God called us to. So this past Sunday, we all watched the pews fill up and the brunch spots overflow. I did not get out there in that brunch space. Actually, I did church from home. I am not here for the crowds. But if you were out there, let me know how it was. Hit me up. People gathered to celebrate the risen Christ. A lot of us call it Resurrection Day or Resurrection Sunday instead of Easter. And that itself is a societal thing, right? Because Easter is the name that was put on it in our westernized culture, just like a Christmas, right? But what we're really celebrating would be the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So because it was Resurrection Day, I found myself reflecting on what does resurrection look like when you're a woman who's had to fight just to be seen and understood? What does it mean to rise from a grave of misnaming, stereotyping, or even silence, a suppression of voice? As I was sleeping last night, actually, I think it was this morning, I heard 3 words: oppression, depression, and suppression. Now, I'm not about to teach on that yet because I need to dive into it more myself. Of course, the overview thought of it makes a lot of sense, but I think personally, I would need to look at those definitions a little more extensively and allow the Holy Spirit to unleash to me or reveal to me how that connects to the Sisters Unbothered. So y'all look for that. That's going to be coming in the near future. Real quick before we jump all the way in, I have decided that I am going to take the month of May to restructure everything because I have been promising you all more content, more handouts, more books, more information um, for your own journeys, as well as an availability of myself. I want to do a group coaching through the Substack and so forth. So I'm going to take the month of May, repurpose content instead of making new, and restructure everything so that the month of June, I'm ready to come back, refreshed, restructured, and ready to up my game in order to support you in your journeys. Okay. So be on the lookout on that for the next 4 or 5 weeks. All right. So back to it. So, as I was thinking about this and the names or labels that we've been given by society, by people, by our culture, not by God, names like challenging, unworthy, helpless, hopeless, aggressive, lazy, strong, but not soft, Jezebel, Mammy. We've been navigating this world crooked, trying to find our footing in systems that were never designed with us in mind. More and more, as I study our country and the origination of the Black community in this country, not even just the Black community, Black, brown, yellow, and red people of this country were brought into a system where we were, not only was a system not created to accommodate us standing upright as who we are, it is intended for us to shift ourselves and live in a space where we accommodate to them. Assimilation, right? So when they first came in and decided to take the lands of our native brothers and sisters, their intention was to rid themselves of the native completely and totally. They did not expect that they would ever exist in their natural state, that they would have assimilated into the Anglo-Saxon lifestyle, ways of thinking, ways of speaking, ways of worshiping, ways of living. And they expected that of every other group as they were brought into this country. Now, obviously, my African ancestors that were brought here were not expected to necessarily assimilate, as they were not considered people, right? They were considered property. Now, once that was taken away from them and we were able to stand as citizens in this country, there was a vast expectation, just like with our native brothers and sisters, our Latino and Asian brothers and sisters coming into this country. There was an expectation that we would fall in line, that we would assimilate, that we would stand crooked, because that is not who we are, it is who they are, but that we would stand crooked in this room and be okay with it, right? Because what does it mean to stand upright in a crooked room? It means to be authentic in that space, okay? Authentic, true, real. That your identity is not based off of what's given to you, but who God says that you are, who you know to be. So where did I get this concept of the crooked room? It comes from a book by Melissa Harris Perry called Sisters Citizen. And I encourage you to read the blog post. And I am also, I believe, next week for the first repurposed podcast, I'm going to do the previous podcast I did last year around the election season on this book again, because I was talking about the stereotypes placed upon Black women and how we were seeing that play out in the election. Okay. So that will be next week's podcast, a repurposing of that. All right, but she talks about this powerful concept in Sister Citizen called the crooked room. And it's based on a psychological study where people were placed in a room with tilted images and furniture, and they were asked to stand upright. Mind you, you're in this room and everything is tilted. So if you stand upright, you're going to feel like you're not upright, right? Because everything else around you is tilted. Some of the people were so influenced by the crooked room that they adjusted themselves to match the room, i.e., assimilation. They believed they were standing straight even though they were tilted up to 35 degrees. But a few, only a few, managed to find true vertical, and they stood straight even when everything around them was bent. Sis, is that not the world that we live in? Or the country, the society that we live in? As Black women, we've been in the crooked room for generations. And the danger isn't just the room. It's when the room starts convincing us that bent is normal. I want you to think about that. This country that was not built with the intentions of us having full citizenship rights, accommodations, structurally, it was not built to include us. So centuries later, we are still standing, trying to stand upright in a room that was built for someone else. This room is crooked. It is bent to white supremacy. It's bent to patriarchy. But we are not the heirs to those systems. So we are either required to bend ourselves to accommodate, or in a way of resistance, finding our way to stand upright anyway. And that's something I want to encourage you today as you are walking into this revamped identity that God is developing within you, and you are shedding these expectations of assimilation and being accepted under oppressive rule. I want you to consider and truly ask God and truly take the time to understand where you're still bending to accommodate. I know this one is a little bit, it feels like it's a little bit heavy, y'all. I don't have a joke for y'all to try to lighten it up. But I can't express it enough, especially now as our history that we know has happened is being wiped out. They are attempting to erase our history. They are attempting to erase our progress. And no matter how much we assimilate, we will always be seen as a threat because they know that that history does exist and that they are wiping or attempting to wipe out and erase a pertinent culture in this country. Those that built it, created it, did the labor, provided the stolen intellectual properties. Hello? The workforce. It's interesting. I just saw yesterday that they dismantled the sit-in lunch counter exhibit at the Smithsonian. Basically, they want to remove anything that reminds people that we are, in fact, trying to survive in the crooked room of the United States of America. instead of us attempting to change that room and make it stand upright for all people, they are taking us backward to where either you accept the room is crooked and bend to it, or you are punished. And that's where we are. So, moving beyond the grief that I am feeling, bringing that out to all of us, I encourage you to read my blog posts and read about my personal testimony with living in this crooked room space. But I will speak plainly here as well. I didn't just read about this. The reason why it resonated so greatly with me when I read it years ago was because I've also lived it, right? Being a teen mother, I've been assumed to be promiscuous because I have 4 daughters. It was assumed that all of my babies were by 4 different daddies in random relationships, and not that that doesn't exist and that there's something wrong with someone that is the case, but you do not assume that about people. Because I have 2 sets of daughters and both of them were in marriages, right? I was assumed to be lazy because I didn't have my degrees or the dollars in the bank. But you try coming straight out of high school as a wife, a teen wife and mother, and then continue to have more babies without the support and the help systems to obtain those degrees and make those dollars. Not that it's impossible. And to my sisters that have been able to do that, God bless you. But 9 times out of 10, there was some level of support there that I just did not have. Not to mention undiagnosed depression and anxiety disorders, right? So here I am now. I'm getting it done. Moving on to my grad degree in the fall. And my kids are grown. And I'm not angry about that. But in the past, I have had to have conversations with people who assumed otherwise, you know? I'm sure you may be able to relate. People assuming that I would be angry and that I am challenging and I am aggressive because I knew how to speak up for myself. And it took a long time to get to that, y'all, because if you knew me as a child in high school, a teenager, a young in my 20s, I avoided conflict like the plague, y'all. I had to learn how to speak up for myself, and I think that started with learning how to speak up for my daughters. So, does that make us angry Black women? Because we are willing to speak up? It does not. However, we will be viewed as that, will we not, in this crooked room? As a light-skinned Black woman, mixed race, I've wrestled with internalized misnaming from both ends. Never enough or always too much. To be honest with y'all, I found out 100% that I am half Filipina during the pandemic, y'all. 2020, I found my biological father. And over the past 5 years, as much as I have tried to make myself available for a relationship and to get to know that side of me, it has not brought the fruit that I had hoped. And I will never be a Filipina in culture and lifestyle. I will always be a Black woman because that is who I was raised to be. That is what I lived with. That is who my family is. And it just is what it is. But again, that's a part of that identity. Am I going to bend from being who I am to try to assimilate into this family that I would assume just doesn't even want to go through the process of trying to help me assimilate? But it's something to think about, right? Because then you're talking identity. A lot of us go through that ancestry process because we want to understand our identity from all sides. You know, you feel like you're missing part of your identity because you don't know what that other side looks like, right? Well, I can look at him and I know, even though I thought I looked like my mother, I look like him. I looked in his face, I saw myself. I looked at my siblings on that side, I saw bits of me. And that's going to have to be enough because I am not willing to bend into this space where I have to let go of who I am, what I've seen, what I've experienced, my love for Black people, the fight that we have in us, that we've had to fight, what my grandfather had to fight in the rural, my grandmother in the rural South growing up, and my mom and my aunts and my uncle, and all of us, y'all, all of us. I think I told y'all this before. For me, the biggest turning point, turning me back to Blackness, was Trayvon Martin's murder. And I remember sitting there and I was just crying. I was sitting in the dark crying. And I thought of this image of my brother getting in an elevator and someone clutching their bag just for him standing there. And it broke my heart because I had never thought about it from that perspective. That is a crooked room. But you know what's so funny? We tend to see others in that way as well. Because to be honest with you, I'm clutching my bag and tensing up to a white man in a suit more than I am a brother in a hoodie. And that's just facts. So we have some stuff on our side that we need to deal with as well. And maybe it just is the way that it is, y'all. But this is the thing now, okay? This is why we cannot conform just to the patterns of this world, okay? We need to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. There is not enough legislation in this world to straighten this crooked room. I was just talking to my best friend about this. We were having this conversation via text, and I said to her, I mean, what is there to do? Does it all have to be ripped down in order to rebuild? Is that even possible? If this is how it was built in the first place. That seems unreasonable, does it not? Or is it that we just need to have the people willing to be the bridge? Maybe that's what we need. Many of us thought that Vice President Harris would be that bridge. I'm not going to say that all my eggs are in that basket. Honestly, without God, I don't see how it could happen because there's not enough legislation in the world to change the hearts of people. And as long as we are fully focused on aligning ourselves with the patterns of this world, this culture, this society, we are going to be operating either from a space of being oppressed or being the oppressors. Okay. So the biggest shift came not from proving the world wrong, but from accepting what God already said about me. And so this is why we need to have more of a God understanding of things. The big picture, the macro version, and micro individually. Okay, because what I had to realize is that I am Nikki Lakeisha Cates Miller. I am not Mammy. I am not Jezebel. I am not a welfare queen. I am not a sapphire. I am not broken. I am not invisible. I am victorious. And in the blog post, I talk about how the meaning of my name is victory of the people. I had to grow into that. I remember the first time I read that years ago, I thought, I'm not a victory for anybody. But here I am today, shaking myself from conforming to the patterns of this world around me and being transformed by the renewing of my mind and understanding more and more the will of God. because that is what is going to truly bring lasting transformation, bridging cultural and social with God's truths. And that's what I hope to do here through Sisters Unbothered and the Sacred Resistance Journal. So, sis, if he is helping me to reclaim my identity, he can also do the same for you. He will, he wants to. We need to allow him to. Okay? So, let's talk about this for a second. If naming is a spiritual act, is it not spiritual warfare to be misidentified? In scripture, names aren't just labels, they are prophetic identities, like how we spoke about Jacob, right? We say wrestling with God, but he wrestled with the stranger, which turned out to be a representative of God. He didn't know that he was wrestling for his identity as Israel at the time that he started wrestling. He didn't know that till after it was over, and he's walking away with a limp. And a lot of times we don't know it either. There has to be what we call a coming to Jesus moment, a light bulb moment, an aha moment, where we can see past the circumstances, we can see past the warfare, and we can begin to speak beyond that into who we actually are. That's a spiritual process, my sister. That is a spiritual process, right? The world gives you names to categorize you or contain you. God gives you names to release you into his purposes. Okay? Revelations 2:17 says, "To the one who overcomes, I will give a white stone and on it a new name." Your identity is sacred, my sister. And how you see yourself determines how you show up in this world. It doesn't belong to the patriarchy. It doesn't belong to white supremacy. It doesn't belong to your past or to your pain or to your circumstances. It belongs to God. Okay? I hope this is a blessing to someone this morning, because it took me a long time to accept that I am not who people say that I am, especially when you feel like you've made a lot of mistakes and fouled up in a lot of ways. It is easy to identify yourself by those mistakes, or those shortcomings, or those flaws, or those struggles. And I'm here to tell you, you can choose to no longer conform your identity to the sayings of the people, the society, the culture, the circumstances around you. This is a God and internal thing. Okay? That's where it starts to change. That's where it evolves. And that's where it should live, so that you can figure out what is standing upright for you in this crooked room. So this is my question for you this week. What names are you still answering to that don't belong to you anymore? Let them go. Write them down and tear them up. Replace them with the truth. You are not stupid. You are not slow. You are not unworthy. You are not helpless. You are not there's a word that's coming to me, but it's taking a minute. So maybe that's for another time. I will leave that alone for now. But I will say this. Your new name is coming from heaven and not from hate, not from oppression, not from depression, not from suppression. Okay? So let's say this together. I am no longer who they said I was. I am who God says I am. I am named, known, and called. I am standing upright in a crooked room. I am a victorious daughter of the Most High God. And the call of action for this week, first, is to join Sisters Unbothered on Substack. Download the Unbothered workbook. I would say even download, was it last week, the devotional? And begin to work through the journaling and the exercises to reacquaint yourself with who you are. Sometimes, I know for me, I've done so many of these exercises over the decades, and sometimes I just have to go back to it just to remind myself, this is who I am. Not who my circumstances say I am. Not how I'm feeling in the moment, because our feelings are misleading many times. We are to acknowledge them, but not let them drive the car, if you know what I'm saying. So reconnect and reclaim, and then begin to speak out loud to yourself affirmations, reminders of who you actually, truly, authentically standing upright are. And share this episode with a sister who needs to be reminded that she is not what people call her. She is who God named her to be. All right? Well, I love you, my sisters. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. And I will be back with new episodes in a month. But please, reconnect with the repurposed episodes in May. And we will touch spaces soon. Come holler at me. Send me a message on Substack. All right. Have a great one. I love you. All right, sis, that's a wrap on this episode of Sisters Unbothered. If today's conversation reminded you that you don't have to hustle for your worth, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And don't keep this to yourself. Send it to a sister who needs to hear this, girl. Let's keep this energy going. Follow me on TikTok or Fanbase at I am Nikki Cates. Also, on Substack, you can find Sisters Unbothered with Coach Nikki. And on YouTube at Nikki Cates, Sisters Unbothered, or I am Nikki Cates. For more on rest, faith, and living unbothered as Black women in America. Because choosing rest is choosing freedom. And Black women, we deserve both. Talk to you soon.